Good afternoon and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. Today we are joined by Tony Danko, CEO of Capital I, and Derek Brown, Healthcare Technology Manager Site Lead at Capital I. Webinar Wednesday would like to thank our sponsor, Capital I. Capital I, established in 2018 in Springfield, Missouri, is a privately owned healthcare technology management solutions company. As a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business, they are committed to enhancing healthcare for service members, veterans, and broader communities through effective HTM solutions. Their mission revolves around reducing healthcare costs, enhancing care quality, and increasing access to care. So for more information, please visit capitali.us. Just a quick reminder about our Fall MD Expo. We're headed to the Caribe Royal Hotel in Orlando, Florida this Sunday, the 29th until the 31st. So please join us for 3 days of education, networking, and the latest advances in medical technology products and services. Registration is still open, so for more details, please visit mdexposhow.com. Also, a copy of the pre-show planner can be found in the handout section of your webinar dashboard. Okay, just in its continued effort to promote and applaud the men and women in the HTM industry, TechNation magazine is introducing the Tech Choice Awards, also known as the Wrenches. Nominations are being accepted through November the 3rd in a variety of categories, and up to 13 wrenches will be awarded, with the winners selected based on 100% votes from those who make up the HTM industry. The winners will be announced in the March 2024 issue of TechNation, so make sure you don't miss out and get your nominations in quickly. More details can be found in the handout section of your dashboard and online at onetechnation.com/Tech Choice Awards. Today's webinar is eligible for 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey. The survey will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar, and you must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit. You'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. And if you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Let's kick off today's webinar by giving away one of our great Webinar Wednesday t-shirts to the attendee that can tell me the answer to the following trivia question. Halloween is almost upon us, so which movie features the Sanderson sisters, the fictional trio of witches? Answer now using the questions feature on your dashboard, and I'll reveal the answer at the end of the webinar. We'll be wrapping up today's presentation with a live Q&A, so please submit your questions anytime using the questions feature on your webinar dashboard. As I mentioned earlier, our presenters today are Tony Danko and Derek Brown, and they will be discussing HTM Data Modernization. Tony, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, and welcome aboard. Everybody joined us. We got about a few dozen on here, and definitely great timing for us to be the last webinar Wednesday before the MD Expo. So this will be fresh on everybody's mind, and we hope to run into some folks that are on this webinar this weekend. So very excited to be out there. So both Derek and I will be out there attending some classes and kind of roaming around on the floor as well. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. And one of the things that we have dealt with a lot of our clients, and even in our time managing health systems inside of health systems, is the data aspect of the HTM department, whether it be clinical engineering, biomed, whatever you would like to call it. But we like to use the term HTM because it's all encompassing. And the data management, and a lot of folks talk about data standardization, data normalization. So our key focus is really to discuss data modernization. How do we take the HTM's data, all their information, typically in a CMMS, and formalize the entire process of managing that data, so that way we can have some good outcomes and leverage it as a good tool to make those decisions. So we'll just jump right into the presentation. The one thing that we'd like to just ask the group of attendees, what is your confidence level of your HTM data? So we got the quick poll up there. If everybody could just go ahead and match if you have a high level of confidence in your data, what you have. If it's medium, it's okay, or if it's meh, it's low. But this would be interesting to kind of talk through as we go through the presentation.
Okay, Tony, I'm going to close the poll and share it. And you have got 20%, 26%, sorry, at high, 55% at medium, and 19% at low.
Okay, well that's good to know. You know, we're kind of all over, but we figured that the medium level of confidence is kind of what we expected. And we understand for the folks that have that low level of confidence, and there, that could result in, or you know, those results could mean there's a couple of different things happening. Either the CMMS isn't capable of capturing the data, or there's not a standardized process to do data entry within the CMMS, or there are a lot of other components at play that preclude good, clean data and your confidence in the data. So one of the things that we have encountered, and we know that some of our clients encounter, is that there are some things that you need to answer to leadership with your data. All of these things go back to data. You want to know the cost of service ratio to talk about the financial health of your department. You need to manage hazards, alerts, recalls. You're tasked with equipment replacement planning and coming up with a 5-year replacement plan or a capital acquisition strategy. Or there's just constant data calls. And you all can kind of name a bunch of other things and activities that you have to do and report to and report on, and they all lead back to your data posture. And it starts as basic as your asset inventory, your asset management, all the transactions that occur against those assets, how that's managed, and then that all points back to your CMMS and how you're interacting within the CMMS and capturing that data. So we'd like to explore and describe a framework that an organization can leverage to ensure that you can get to that really high level of confidence within your data environment. Because those folks that are at the higher level, they're on this call looking for better ways to refine their data. It's very important to them. And then the folks that answered that they have a medium or a low level of confidence, they'd like to kind of figure out, okay, where do I start? How do I get things rolling in the right direction to increase my level of confidence? So that way, when I'm asked to do and provide reports, I feel comfortable. I don't have to provide 1,000 caveats with those reports because I have some missing data or there are some shortcomings within my data profile. So I'm going to hop forward to our next slide. And we talk about data modernization in 3 phases. So these are very high level. One of the most important things is that governance and cleansing. We like to talk about normalizing or standardizing the data posture, but really it starts with that, establishing those rules and tools. So in that governance and cleansing area, this is really where you're formally kind of getting together as an organization. You're establishing a data management, either a committee or a team of folks with some authority to make those changes, to build out those data dictionaries and catalogs, because we all know that, even if we agree to call devices the same thing, it doesn't always get entered that way. Or there's a lot of times that we just don't agree that this is what that should be called. There are some standards and some rules or some tools out there, ECRI being one of the most common ones, to take a look at what they provide, leveraging that information and kind of pulling that forward into your system. But it's important to have that local committee or, to help manage that and set up those rules, those policies, and that program compliance as well. So you all don't want everybody to be able to just make changes on a whim or without some formal process, because that's how you start to lose your confidence in your data. The next piece too is, once this data goes live or you're interacting with it through various transactions, it's that quality and stewardship. So establishing these rules, these left and right limits, during the normalization process, that's kind of your housekeeping. What you want to do is, we offer this service to our clients, and we give them an opportunity while we're discussing kind of what the offering would be to either align with an ECRI standard or align with what's most frequently captured within the information in your system, right? So that way, there's not as much change, it's not as disruptive that way. However, it's kind of a process that could be misaligned with some of the industry standards that ECRI kind of leads with. And then, a big piece too is that financial information. I've peered into several CMMSs and looked at inventories where over 60% of the devices have a value or an acquisition cost of $0. And it's very difficult to make decisions on that. It really impacts your cost of service ratio. So if you're measuring how you are performing financially as an HTM department, it's very difficult. It skews your numbers. It makes you look worse off potentially than you are, and really you have a lower level of confidence, or there's some data that will be skewed and will require some caveats that we talked about earlier. And then of course, the ongoing data maintenance. When you decommission something, you have to have a process to remove it or put it into a retired status in your CMMS. New ads are a big thing. I'm sure that most of the people on this call understand or have encountered a medical piece, a device comes into the facility without biomed or the HTM department even knowing it's there. The first time that they would even recognize that a device is there is when it's broken and the clinical end user needs you to fix it. Somehow it got acquired, somehow it got through the back door, and somehow it was already being used on patients. So new ads and one of our kind of mantras is to become the path of least resistance. So if we have an HTM department that makes it really easy to bring equipment on, to get it fast tracked for clinical use, those clinical end users or acquisition folks will ensure that it goes through the HTM department, because that's important to know what you have and what you're bringing to the table. Administrative adjustments. So as you're doing services, BMEDs may see something wrong with the serial number or the naming convention, and to make those changes. And again, all of this happens within the governance structure. And then of course the transactional standardization. This is how you're applying notes, how you're closing work orders. Do you have a way to do modes of failure so you can do some next level analytics? And then that's a great kind of transition to the analytics vertical. And really this is where you're getting those insights, your decision support, your different types of reporting. And everybody loves visualizations now. Everybody wants a dashboard. Everybody likes to talk about the gee whiz or what it looks like, and something that you can present to senior leaders. I'm a big fan of being able to get to predictive modeling, so really understanding how the devices behave. And again, we talked about that visualization in those dashboards. So I'll pause there to see if there are any questions on this slide that has popped up. I'm not sure if we've seen anything come across yet, but if something pops immediately, just go ahead and ask the question, and then we'll circle back to them. Okay, so I'm going to really kind of deep dive into that phase one, this governance and cleansing. And these are things that we do with our clients, but you could take this and do it internally, kind of act as your own internal consultant to go through these actions. I think I jumped ahead one slide. Let me back up a little bit here. Okay, so the first thing that you'd want to do is evaluate your CMMS. So obviously, if you're on an Excel spreadsheet, you're in trouble. You're going to have a great amount of difficulty kind of going through that. But most organizations are not using Excel. They have something a little bit more advanced. And the one thing that we do understand is that everybody's favorite CMMS is the one that they're about to get. Their least favorite one is the one that they currently have. There's no one CMMS that's better than the other. It's just, how are you using it? There are some capabilities that are different, but how those capabilities work within your organization, that's the key to get into that CMMS. So you have to use what you're stuck with. I always think that if you're in a CMMS and you may transition, don't wait until the transition to kind of clean up and make things right within your CMMS. I would say do that within your legacy system and transition with clean data so you can really leverage your newest system. So within this evaluation, you're really going to kind of review that current system, really discuss and understand the capabilities and limitations to support a data modernization effort. So, roles and responsibilities, how you can lock something down. Do you have a tie to a system of truth or your system of record for data normalization, like ECRI or like your own data catalog? Can your CMMS do things like that? When you're doing this activity, you're definitely going to need that clinical engineering leadership, some healthcare technology management SMEs, so the supervisors, the managers, the leaders within the HTM department. And it's always good to bring in a data analyst to provide a look back and pull some information so you can baseline what your data posture looks like within the CMMS. So then the next action during this governance and cleansing is really looking at that catalog and the asset, the transaction accuracy. Are the transactions that are going into the system, is that process standardized? So you'd want to take a look at what your baseline is once again, and then take a look at what are going to be the efforts to clean up these data records. Is it going to be a heavy lift? How much of it can you automate? Can your CMMS automate some of this cleanup work? Do you have enough confidence in an automation tool to do that for you? Or do you need to bring in some other kind of tools or subject matter experts? And then within this realm, you would have your CE leadership, once again, your HTM SMEs, and then this is where the data stewards come in, and it's important to kind of define what a data steward is. So that's the person that's going to be responsible for ensuring that the data that's coming into the system is aligned with your governance structure. So that's the person that will be kind of identified and tasked with creating and maintaining the information within the system. So again, there are certain things that your governance may say a data steward has the authority to do, or only the data steward has the authority to do, or you can kind of hand out or delegate some of that authority to technicians, to managers, and different leadership. But the data steward has to be kind of aware of that change management and working through that. So then once you kind of figured that out, you go through, you have all these baselines done. Now you're going to establish your clinical engineering data governance. This is really to design that CE structure, data governance structure. And again, every system is different. So when we had some of these conversations, we started this discussion with Penn Med and their CE program. So again, we talked to them about the size and the scope of their CE program and what it would take to build a structure to support that size and scope of your program. So again, this could be a single hospital, a hospital with several clinics, a regional health system with many med-cens and hospitals. Again, that's what you need to ensure that based on the size and scope of your clinical delivery system, your clinical engineering data governance system matches. And this is when you're going to start to bring in some executive leadership outside of clinical engineering. So folks on the environment of care committee, and then again, the data stewards will be in this area as well. And then once that's done and you have that governance, then you go into the data cleansing phase. Right here, you would execute that data normalization based on the strategy from your baselines. you would then clean up consistent with the data government guidelines. It could be to say we're going to go to ECRI. This is the data mapping and library that you all are going to use, and someone like GE, a manufacturer, is called GE or it's called General Electric, but there's going to be agreements while you're doing this process because you're going to refer back to the governance and those documents. You may need to use IT leadership in this area as well, because there are going to be some things that you may have to tap into within the CMMS to provide that support. So I will hop on to the next pillar that we talk about, phase 2, which is that quality and stewardship. So inside the quality and stewardship, so this is you're essentially you're going live, and you want to make sure that anybody has the access or the ability to provide information inside of the CMMS, that you're doing it in a standardized way. So the standardized data entry, this is where you kind of go to those work instructions, those procedures, to ensure that those daily activities for data entry are captured and processed in a standard way, because that's when we start to have deviation, is when technicians are allowed to kind of go through and make changes as they see fit. But we want to make sure that that's standardized across the board. So if one technician has to pick up a work order, they know what to expect, what they can expect to see. And then if as others kind of work through this and see the closed work orders to do some analysis, you're able to see that as well in a pretty routine method. The next step would be to take a look at capturing additional data elements. So you would continue, let me see if I can, there we go. So if you can continue to review the data elements required for the CE program, and ensure all new required elements are accompanied within the procedures. So one of those things that kind of typically pops up and then we're seeing more and more, I'm not sure why this continues to hop ahead on me, but what we're seeing more and more is the inclusion of IT information. So the IP addresses, the version of patching, iOS or OS versions for the operating systems, those types of things kind of come into play. And this is an area where we want to make sure that we can capture that within your CMMS. And then the next piece will be that quality control. So obviously you want to see, is your system working? Are your processes easy to follow, and are your technicians and everybody that interacts with this process able to continue and work through that, and the outcomes of that information is available and easily readable and usable by the different folks within the organization. And then for phase 3, we're going to jump into the analytics. So I'm going to hand it over to Derek to talk through some of these analytics and and what this means to the modernization effort.
Thank you, Tony. So in the third phase of data modernization, we do come to the analytics portion, and it's where we formally take a look at that recently cleaned data. So from analyzing this data, strategic decisions and inferences can be made about the organization's data and the related assets there. So building reports off of clean data gives you an accurate view of the state of your assets, your inventory, and your financials. So with these reports, an organization is able to ensure that they remain compliant to relative governing bodies, like we talked about a second ago, and can be used to build insightful dashboards to relay the data to the responsible parties. So building an accurate analysis consists of 3 key actions. So the first one is to create these reports. And once your organization has come through the previous 2 phases, so your data has been reviewed in the CMMS, it's been normalized to the data governance guidelines, Procedures have been created for data entry, additional data elements have been captured, and the data entry accuracy of your team members has been evaluated. So the reports are then created that provide those details of the entire clinical engineering program and its effectiveness. So with these, we can then identify gaps that may exist with the data itself, with the assets, or possibly even the clinical engineering team members. And as you see for the creating reports, the resources here is your clinical engineering leadership and then the data analysts. So the same team that we talked about a second ago. The second part is to create these dashboards. So different dashboards here are made to provide insight at different levels. These can include the strategic, managerial, and transactional dashboards that we talked about on a couple previous slides. These dashboards help with the visualization of the HTM modernization project, and they highlight all the various levels of the clinical engineering department, the leadership team, and the support team. So the very final stage of the HTM modernization project is the feedback. It's ultimately your goal here. So once all of the data, it's collected, it's scrubbed, it's analyzed, it's aligned, gaps are found in the organization or in the data or in the equipment or personnel, all of that's identified. And then we can see the opportunities for improvement there. We identify those, training plans can be developed, and then any support changes can be made there. So that kind of brings you to the very end of the whole modernization project. So we take the feedback from this analysis and we package it up and then present it to the organization. And it's with this information that you can make, some meaningful changes to your organization and ultimately help in the future success of that organization. Wraps up the end of the project there.
Okay. And then, so, Derek had talked about, kind of what do we want to push out through the analytics. So Derek, do you want to talk about maybe some of these different outcomes once we've helped some organization with their data modernization and cleanup? I'll let you, and then we can kind of go back and forth what we've seen with some of our clients.
Sure. Yeah, and it should be said that we've serviced a pretty wide array of the sizes of different facilities and different organizations. So they are unique to each situation. But so like an updated acquisition strategy, so getting this data from their assets, we worked with places that don't have a CMMS. Like Tony said, it was just an Excel spreadsheet. And we've went farther than that. We had an Excel spreadsheet that was copied and pasted into a Word document, so you couldn't even use the spreadsheet itself. So updating that acquisition strategy, just giving them a sense of what they own, where it is, repairs that have been done, PM schedules, anything that might have been, a safety recall that came out. So aligning all that stuff to these governing bodies like we talked about, ECRI and AMI and all of these. So making sure that their equipment, first of all, is accounted for, is up to code, up to date, and repaired and ready to be used on patients. So we've seen a huge variety of it from not having any system to, massive hospital systems that their CMMS is just lacking in a lot of these data points that you need. There's really not a lot of analytics that can be inferred from it. So getting in and updating all of that with the acquisition strategy.
Yeah, and then one of the things too that we've worked with, capturing accountability and asset management is a daunting task. So I come from the Army, where that's the one thing that I can say that the DoD and the military has done very well, and that's asset accountability. Now, granted, they do have a lot of different rules and tools at their disposal, like total financial liability of an end user or of a clinician that it has to be held accountable, whereas you typically do not see that in the VA or even in the commercial sector. And a lot of that time, the onus of that asset accountability is left to the HTM department, just because they have to maintain it. They need to make sure it's in their CMMS. If something is missing or unable to locate, they raised a flag on that and kind of work through what that risk would look like. So by having a good modernized data program, you're able to put out some information to say, okay, this asset's missing. Here's a photo of it. This is what it actually is. It's in the system. We know it's correct. We have a high level of confidence that this is exactly what we've been looking for. So you can push that information out, and you're able to get some feedback from the clinicians and your downstream clients to help you either look for that or identify what has happened to that device. But sometimes if your data is not cleaned up, you don't have a high level of confidence when you're pushing out that information, and you may send somebody on a wild goose chase to look for something that it's not actually what you say it is or what you think it is. So that's the other piece too. So capturing that accountability, if you're going to do periodic inventories, it's a lot easier to conduct those inventories if you're scanning barcodes or if you're looking for devices and your asset tags. If that information is correct in your system, it's going to lead you down to the right path, and you're going to be able to very quickly validate that accountability. And then the other piece is that medical device integration. So this is a big part, particularly when as health systems modernize, update, replace their electronic health records, and then you have the capability to integrate your medical device into the EHR to bring over that clinical captured information from the medical device into the EHR. This is critical to having a good modernized data set is critical for a good, smooth MDI program. So you're not going to miss things that should be integrated. You're not going to have to stop at every device and update the record in the CMMS as you're doing the integration and conducting those activities. And then we talked about earlier those additional data elements that you would have to capture. So the IP addresses, the OS, all of those different things that are going to be required to make this integration, these connections. Derek, you want to talk a little bit more about this or anything else as far as outcomes and modernization?
I think that covered it pretty well, at least on my side. Yeah.
Okay, good deal. So we will go ahead and jump ahead and remind everybody, we talked about earlier about the MD Expo starting on Sunday. So Derek and I will be out there and definitely we're eager to talk to folks about this process. And one thing I do want to point out is a lot of this framework was captured from the DAMA, the global data management community. And there is a data management book of knowledge or a body of knowledge. And we've referenced a lot of that information from DAMA. So this isn't, this isn't just totally made up through experience and interaction with the different organizations. Although as we interacted and encountered various things and various types of data structure or postures that our clients have had, we recognized that we needed to go to a global authority. So we went to DAMA, leveraged their data management body of knowledge, and kind of built out what this architecture looks like for that data modernization, and to put some governance and controls and some, formalize the data management process. So I'll stop right here and kind of hand it over so we can kick off some questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Tony. We've got some questions here. The first question is, how would I begin to determine the quality of my current data program?
Yeah, so we highlighted a little bit, the first place that you'd want to take a look at is your CMMS. And one of the basic kind of academic exercises that I go through is I like to take a look at how many unique items do you have that have a combined manufacturer and model number. So what I typically will do is I'll take a look at a concatenation of manufacturer and model, and then create kind of that's a unique record. And then put those into buckets. How many times does that occur just one time? How many does it occur 1,000 times, right? And you have various buckets. And if you have a data set that indicates that you have over 80% unique make models, your data may be out of control, because you intuitively know that you do have more than one each of this type of thermometer. You probably know you have about 500 of them, but you have them listed differently in your CMMS, and then that's a good tell that you have data that's out of control, and that's a baseline that you can kind of anchor yourself to. Now, if you have a lot of devices in those larger buckets where you have this one concatenated make model that has 1,000 eaches, then you're in good shape in that area. So that's a very quick way to take a look and analyze your data. Derek, did you want to elaborate on that as well, or is that?
Yeah, you summed that up pretty well. So, like you said, getting everything aligned and normalize the nomenclature wise, even from a technician standpoint. So if you're looking through your inventory, trying to find this device that needs a PM, the device that needs a repair, and then as you said, if the just even the manufacturer and model number aren't aligned, it's hard to even find that in a working CMMS. So getting that aligned and that nomenclature sorted out is very important.
Yep. And then one of the other things that I highlighted earlier on was to take a look at your acquisition cost of the device. So if you have either a penny or a zero assigned to a majority of your records, you know that you're missing out on a huge data element and something that can help you tell that data story moving forward. So those are some activities that you can do to really tell what your data posture looks like and kind of measure that level of confidence that you have in your data.
Okay, another question here is my healthcare system too small to consider data modernization?
Yeah, so we look back at one of our clients that we helped out. They only had a couple, I don't know, I'd say just several hundred devices, and with that size of a system, it was still imperative for them to clean up the data, have a modernized process or a process to capture their data, make sure everything was standardized and standardly put into the system. So I would say there's no health system too small. I would say even in a clinic, because it's going to help you make some decisions. The data modernization effort will become easier if you have a small organization. However, it's important that you're prepared for scale or for change and growth by having a formalized process in place. So I think it's important, regardless of size, to put a program in place.
Okay, I've got a question here.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Did I interrupt?
Yeah, Derek,
I was just gonna say we have worked with small clinics like that, where we've heard stories of doctors or nurse practitioners that are doing that inventory and even work on the machines themselves when there is a lot better things they can be doing with their time. So even these extremely small private care facilities can benefit from some data modernization, just to keep everything on track, because even they do know the medicine side, it's the equipment side, where we're the specialist in the PMs, the repairs, the acquisition costs, those kind of things, that we could keep them a lot more organized than somebody that's actively treating patients on top of that.
Okay, great. Now I apologize in advance if I mispronounce this, but what percentage of your clients utilize ECRI nomenclature versus those that do not?
Yes, so I would say over 90% recognize ECRI nomenclature and kind of those naming conventions, but probably 50%, half of them actually use the ECRI nomenclature system within the UMDMS, and again, that's device classes, and that extends to nomenclature as well. So that's really, it's most of the clients have an aspiration to get there. but then what they actually use is a lot less. Derek, you know, and you've seen this firsthand. I guess you can speak to this a little bit as well.
Yeah, and being aligned to ECRI nomenclature is important also because of their recalls. That's a huge resource. You know, they get straight from the FDA when there are safety recalls on devices. So, you know, and that experience I had in the field, and then a few of these modernization projects we've had for other customers, that ECRI was kind of the standard we like to go with. So I didn't know the percentage at, you know, an outside view of it, but I would say the majority. Yeah.
Okay, another question here is, what is an example of a success story with data modernization?
Yeah, so one of the major success stories with the data modernization is that we worked with a health system in the Northeast. Really started the modernization and the data normalization effort right before the pandemic started. And we wrapped up, I think, this project, and we gave them a final report, and the modernization then turned into, we did a 5-year equipment replacement plan, and we were able to deliver that to them in April of 2020. So by April of 2020, that's when a lot of health systems were canceling elective services. So there was a lot of revenue generating activities that just were not being conducted in these health systems. Many health systems started laying off people, started to look at ways to save money because they just were not generating revenue through those elective procedures. And what this health system was able to do is to take our report with our normalized and modernized data that we helped them achieve, and then take their 5-year equipment replacement plan and leverage the risk base of deferring acquisition, and allowed them to really defer this capital investment based on the risk that we provided to them. So that was a big piece where we were able to help them out. So they were able to limit the layoffs, and they were able to defer their capital investment into the future because they knew that they could manage or mitigate that risk, even if they didn't purchase a new device. So that was one of a big outcome, that we were able to help out an entire organization, not just the HTM division or directorate, but they were able to help the entire health system with those revenue challenges.
Okay, you mentioned DoD experience. What features that is somewhat mimics the DMLSS capability, if any?
Yeah, so within DEMLS, so some of the features to take a look at the data modernization or even data normalization is I know Jimel Fiddick, who is they're the functional developer of DEMLS. They've been working on a kind of a plug-in or an add-in called Abby, and Abby ties back to ECRI, so that's that nomenclature, and different naming conventions would be standardized. So those types of features and those advancements, and then obviously once DEMLS transitions to logical, where you have that web-based platform and things can be updated and managed at an enterprise level a little bit more easily. So we've been engaged with Jimel Fiddick and the DEMLS system to work through and help the DoD identify what their data modernization effort needs to look like in order to ensure that all of the clients that they support, whether it be Air Force, Navy, or Army, are aligned. So I hope that answers that question, but if you need some more clarification, please please ask further.
Okay, that's great. Now, before we wrap up today, Tony and Derek, is there anything you'd like to expand on or summarize?
So the biggest thing that I would like to really kind of expand on or kind of hit home is that, to really take on a good data posture and a data modernization is you need to establish the governance. Is you'd have to have buy-in on organizations, clinical organizations, IT organizations, to assist with the process of ensuring that your data is under control and the entry aspects under control. That's the key point. And leverage organizations outside of AMI and outside of ECRI and outside of the various typical medical device organizations like the DAMA and the data management body of knowledge, because some of those general principles of data management can be very easily applied to the medical device industry. So it's okay to kind of go outside of just that HTM field to get the support and get the solutions you need. And I would encourage those leaders to do that. Derek, do you have anything else that you'd like to highlight or expound upon?
Yeah, just sorry. Just mainly just let us know if you need any of these kind of services. We'd be happy to help. And as we said a couple times, we'll be at MD Expo. So if you can find me on LinkedIn or on our website and shoot me an email, I'd love to meet some of you guys.
So I have actually got another question that's just popped up, and it says, how robust is the system and what's the inventory capability?
So we don't have, so we're CMMS agnostic. So we can go into whatever CMMS is being used within the health system. So it can be as robust as that system allows you to be. Now, what we're talking about here is processes, procedures, policies, and putting those in place to wrap around the system to help leverage those capabilities and identify the limitations of the system to ensure that your data modernization effort will work and not fail because you might have some limitations. And then how can you mitigate your procedures and how you interact with your system based knowing what those limitations are. So there's no real right answer to say this is the system you will use or this is the CMMS you need to use. We have some for our ISO. We have a CMMS that we use for our ISO services. But as far as for our consulting services, we're CMMS and system agnostic, and we can help build a system around what you have, a program around what you have as a system.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tony and Derek. As they have both mentioned before, if you need to get in contact with them, their email address is on the last slide, and obviously pop and see them at MD Expo if you're going to be there. So thank you, Tony and Derek, again for your time today and for a great informative presentation. I'd like to encourage everyone to visit today's sponsor's website to learn more about the services they provide to the industry. So please visit capitali.us. As promised, the answer to today's trivia question is, of course, Hocus Pocus. So congratulations to our winner, Laura Kroger. Just a quick reminder, you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We'll be back next week with another webinar, so please visit webinarwednesday.live for more details and complimentary registration. Thank you once again for your time today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.